Ready.
Resilience is the buzzword of our time. We often hear people tout that being resilient is not just about surviving through adversity, but more importantly, thriving and coming up better on the other side of it. We agree with this notion, and we know firsthand the growing body of research behind it. What we've learned as scholars, as practitioners, and teachers of humor is that it's a powerful but often overlooked tool that we can use to build and fortify our own resilience. When we laugh, for example, it's not only good for us, it's contagious to those around us. It's hard to be mad or preoccupied or focused on negative things when we're laughing. More generally, humor is something we can use or choose to use to reduce stress, decrease anxiety, promote hope, and develop and sustain our own resilience. It's something the two of us have worked at most of our lives and something we hope to share with you today.
Not to sound cliche, but Brian and I practice what we preach. We laugh at ourselves, we certainly laugh at each other, and we love to laugh with our family and our friends. What's worth noting is that we also use humor to navigate our sadness, our depression, our uncomfortableness, and our pain. You're probably all familiar with the phrase, if I wasn't laughing, I'd be crying. Well, for me lately, this seems to be an anthem for my life. I wish lousy things only came in threes. Soon after my father passed away, a little bit over a year ago, I lost my godfather, I lost an aunt, and I lost my uncle. I tripped walking up the stairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. I'm very coordinated. Walking up the big red stairs in our library here on campus in front of a huge audience of students and ended up giving myself a really bad concussion. And then just to push me right to the edge, my mom shattered her femur and had to have emergency surgery. One of my dearest and closest friends was diagnosed with cancer. I lost my horse of 34 years, and I had to put down my 17-year-old cat. So the last 21 months have been heartbreaking and hard, to say the least. I'm pretty sure we all can agree this is probably the dictionary definition of a dumpster fire. It would be ridiculous of me to suggest that I haven't experienced an immense amount of grief and pain over the last year and a half, because there have been tons of tears, buckets of tears. But what's funny is that there's also been an abundance of laughter. I know that sounds crazy, but trust me, I have laughed a lot. I've laughed a lot because I needed to. I've laughed a lot actually because I wanted to. And most importantly, I've laughed a lot because I've realized just how much it helps me. So this begs the question, how does choosing to use humor help us when we're faced with situations that are challenging, overwhelming, traumatic, or painful? Believe it or not, there is real evidence to support the notion that humor is a conduit to building hope and resilience. Research shows that humor modifies stress, not only by elevating our mood and creating more positive emotion, but also by helping us rethink how we identify and interpret negative experiences. So in this way, think of humor as kind of flipping things on their head. In doing so, it changes our perspective, shifting our focus to cast what was negative in a more tolerable and bearable light. The more we use humor in this way, the more it becomes second nature. I want you to think of laughter as a cathartic act, one that increases our positive feelings, but then in turn bolsters our sense of hope and resiliency. I know it's typical to understand that humor is, of course, part of all the good things in our life. But we argue that finding humor in the darkness, although more challenging, can be even more powerful.
Sadly, we can all relate to Rachel's dumpster fire. Life can be challenging, right? However, it's not the fire we want you to focus on. It's how to dance through it without getting burned. How to use humor to dance through it without getting burned. Humor is an incredibly sharp tool in our shed, but one that we often forget about when the dark times come. Like all of you, I'm a work in progress.
Oh, yes, he is.
And if you really want to lump it on, you can ask my family in the audience. I recently was reminded of some of the ways I've used humor to get through some pretty tough times in my life. I was looking at my high school yearbook, and I came across something that a really good friend had written to me. She had a particularly challenging senior year. In fact, 2 of her close friends had passed away. They were known to all of us, and so it was tough times. She wrote to me and said, "Thank you for making me laugh through my problems this year. I know I had a lot, but somehow I got through." Certainly, I didn't laugh at the death of 2 young men, but I did use humor as a way to cope. I also used it as a way to connect with my friend and show her that there was light on the other side. Our friends generally laughed that year as well because we needed to. I also learned a tremendous amount of humor about using humor in dark times from my grandmother, Graham. She had many challenges in her life, but somehow always seemed to find laughter, even in the darkest times. When I was a kid, I would have a tough time, and she would say, "Laugh, it's okay, it's funny." And I would, and I felt better. This same grandmother introduced me to the Golden Girls. I'm not talking about Rachel and her friends.
Whoa, careful, Brian, don't mess with my squad.
However, I am talking about Dorothy, Blanche, Sophia, and Rose. Like my grandmother, they were a group of women who came together in their 50s.
Whoa, that hurts.
I still can't laugh about that now being in my 50s, right? But importantly, like my grandmother, they were a group of women who came together and laughed around some of the tough times in their life. Things like ageism, sexism, and generally things that happen on a daily basis to all of us. They laughed. Flash forward to my adult life, I continue to use humor often to get through some really tough times. Unbeknownst to us, Rachel and me at the time, a public workplace lashing that we laughed at and through and continue to laugh at today became the basis for our friendship.
True story. Brian and I met as new assistant professors here on campus way back in 2003. If I'm being honest, we probably embodied that stereotypical new professor attitude. We had a slightly overzealous ego, an eagerness to fix everything that was wrong in the world, and definitely a healthy dose of cluelessness that we tried to keep on the down low.
Maybe.
As we were working to situate ourselves in our departments and here at the university, we found ourselves serving on many of the same campus committees, including as Faculty Senate representatives. Now, you're probably wondering, what is Faculty Senate? I will just say we're like a really interesting group. Maybe think of your high school student government on steroids.
That's a good way to describe it.
Okay. So as we were serving as Faculty Senate representatives, it's really where our friendship started to flourish, but it is certainly where all the antics and the escapades ensued.
I still have Rachel to this day to thank when she asked me to join her on the nominations committee.
You're welcome.
We'll see. We'll see. It was a committee of 2, and our task was relatively simple. Get a list of candidates, senators, who were willing to run for elected office of the Senate that following year. Should have been really straightforward. I thought that this would be so simple that people would be lining up to put their name on the ballot. I was wrong.
Yes, you were.
We started by sending emails, and we would get a lot of, "No, thank you, but good luck." Even better, we'd get emails that would say, "No, I'm so glad that it's you on this committee and not me." And we laughed.
Yeah.
And we regrouped, and then we said, it might be better if we go door to door. And so it wasn't better. We went door to door and often got asked to leave people's office. We tried really hard, but we came up short. We failed.
We failed.
Right? So we had to present this to the Faculty Senate, and we were very nervous about it, much like standing in front of all of you fine folks today with the nervous energy, right? Just like being led onto the floor of the Senate that day. The movie Gladiator comes to mind every time. You know, the lions? We got called out onto the floor, and we were nervous, but we got through it. Our report was not well received, as expected, because we didn't do our job, and we stepped off the floor of the Senate, and we laughed. Yeah, and we laughed some more. 24 hours later, when I thought this was all behind us, I was walking in the hallway when a colleague stopped me and said those words you don't want to hear. "You better check your email." I rushed back to my office, only to find an email from a fellow senator. I opened it, and not only had he sent it to 100 other faculty senators, can you believe it? He sent it to the president and provost of the university. It was a very long email. Actually, let's call it a manifesto. It wasn't an email, it was a manifesto.
Okay.
But the manifesto was very long. You know, TLDR, too long, didn't read. However, the last line will forever live in infamy, and I quote, "Senators DiCioccio and Quilliam should be likened to members of the Communist Party in their attempt to overthrow the elections." Whoa, talk about anxiety-inducing.
Yeah.
Thus, Rachel and I were bonded, or maybe the better term is branded, as the communist senators who like to laugh and overthrow the elections in the process.
At the time, all Brian and I could do was think about how this would damage our fledgling reputations on campus.
We were genuinely worried.
We would meet regularly to rehash the incident, trying to calm our anxiety and keep each other from freaking out further. We would meet up and rant and complain and read that manifesto over and over and over again. But inevitably, we'd end up laughing. We would be laughing so hard that we would be crying, recounting the absurdity of being called campus communists. So ironically, what this tense and upsetting experience ended up doing is not only forging a lifelong friendship, it solidified the way that Brian and I use humor, that we use it in a way to reframe what is sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes upsetting, sometimes ugly. We've learned that laughter will allow us to strengthen and build our resilience moving forward. Now, the details of our story are not so important, but in case you were wondering, neither one of us are communists.
Thank you.
What is important for all of us to take away is to think about how we view humor, that it's not just about entertainment, that it can be a really powerful tool that recalibrates how we experience adversity. Embedded in our message is the notion, of course, that humor is a meaningful and memorable part of all the beautiful things that we celebrate in our lives. But what we hope is that you'll also think about using or choosing to use humor as a way to manage the hard times. It's okay to laugh through hardship. In fact, we think it might just present the best path moving forward. Now, we would hate for any of you to leave here tonight to find a parking ticket on your windshield. If that happens to be the case, after you maybe scream an expletive,
Or two.
or three, and you feel your blood pressure ratchet up a few notches, we also hope that you take a second to laugh and recognize,
Now that's funny.
Thank you.
Thank you.